The second week of public impeachment hearings begins tomorrow, and the American people will hear more from administration officials on the White House's dealings with Ukraine. 8 witnesses are expected to come forward in the coming days, and this includes 3 people tomorrow who had firsthand knowledge of the July 25th phone call, which sparked the impeachment inquiry. So Nancy Cordes is on Capitol Hill. What is at stake this week, Nancy?
Well, what we're going to see, Anne Marie, is a number of individuals who have spoken with the president personally about this, individuals who have been asked to testify by Republicans, and at least one individual who is accused of lying under oath. Some of them have said that it was their understanding that the president wanted Ukraine to investigate the Bidens.
I think Truth has had a good week.
Democrats are predicting another good week in Washington as Republicans downplay the evidence gathered so far.
Shouldn't it be based on something that actually happened versus one person's opinion of a third-hand conversation?
But in testimony Friday, diplomatic aide David Holmes told lawmakers he was with U.S. Ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, when Sondland called the president. Holmes says he could hear President Trump say, so he's going to do the investigation? Ambassador Sondland replied that the Ukrainian president would do anything you ask him to. Holmes said Sondland added that Mr. Trump only cares about big stuff that benefits the president, like the Biden investigation that Mr. Giuliani was pushing.
The president had no interest in the defense of the Ukraine. He had one thing in mind. He wanted to shake down President Zelensky.
Over the weekend, White House budget official Mark Sandy reportedly told lawmakers in private testimony that the president's decision to freeze aid to Ukraine this summer was highly irregular and that he could never get an explanation for it. Wisconsin Republican Ron Johnson argued it would have been better if none of this had been exposed.
That funding would have been restored and our relationship with Ukraine would be far better off than it is today.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said there's one witness who could clear things up.
The president could come right before the committee and speak all the truth that he wants if he wants to take the oath of office, or he could do it in writing. He has every opportunity to present his case.
So, Nancy, before we get to what's ahead this week, I want to ask you about David Holmes' testimony behind closed doors, his deposition. Why exactly is his testimony significant?
It's significant because one of the key arguments that Republicans have made is that you can't tie any of this directly to the president. We still don't know exactly what the president wanted because these witnesses are relaying things that they heard secondhand, third-hand through other individuals. Well, here you have an embassy aide who says he heard the president himself over the telephone saying that he wanted these investigations and being told by the U.S. ambassador to the EU, don't worry, the Ukrainians will do anything you want. So Democrats say it is yet another example of many, in their view, of the president directly pushing for these Biden investigations. They disagree with the Republican characterization, by the way. They say, look, you've got the president pushing for this investigation in a phone call, and you've got multiple witnesses testifying this week who did speak to the president directly, and all of them understood that this is what he wanted.
Could we see Holmes testifying publicly?
I think it's quite possible. It's just going to depend on the timing because, as you know, Democrats really want to get this moving in order to have even the chance of passing this by the end of the year, if that's the direction they go in. They really have to wrap up these public hearings this week. So I suppose it's possible they could try to squeeze it in towards the end of the week, but that's what they're weighing right now is, they've already got 8 people testifying this week, and what are the positives and negatives of adding one more?
So Republican lawmakers came to the president's defense on the Sunday morning talk shows, but I'm wondering behind the scenes, as more and more people are coming forward and they're willing to testify and they're sort of corroborating each person's testimony, is there a sign of any crumbling support behind the scenes?
I think the people who have come out and expressed their support for the president and who have defended him aren't moving off of that. Yes, they're behind the scenes. There are a lot of individuals who wish that this would all go away, who feel that the president made a big error in judgment. They're not necessarily the ones you always see on camera talking about this, but the president does have his defenders. They take that role very seriously. They are out there every day, and they're going to continue to defend him no matter how many witnesses we hear from.
All right, so then moving forward, tomorrow we've got 4 witnesses. Speaking of no matter how many witnesses we hear from, 4 of them will be testifying tomorrow. What are you going to be looking out for? What should we be listening for?
Well, I think it's going to be fascinating, first of all, to hear from Alex Vindman. He is the top Ukraine aide at the White House. He's been accused of being a never-Trumper simply because he testified about what he heard. And frankly, what he heard is what a lot of these witnesses have heard, including people like Tim Morrison, who's also testifying tomorrow, who was quite loyal to the president. They both were on that phone call, that July 25th phone call, and they both found it very distressing. So did Jennifer Williams, who is also testifying tomorrow. The president accused her over the weekend of being a never-Trumper simply because she said that she thought that the president's push for the Bidens to be investigated was very irregular and inappropriate. And what did the vice president's office do? Well, they didn't defend her. They basically just said she's a State Department employee, which is not entirely accurate because she's one of the vice president's. She is a State Department employee. She also happens to be detailed to the vice president's office where she gives him advice on foreign policy. So that gives you a sense of the tenor within the White House right now as they try to seek distance from this growing number of aides who have kind of defied the White House order not to testify and have come in and have all said the same thing, which is that their understanding was that the president wanted the Bidens investigated and that they found it inappropriate.
So though it may seem like the only thing happening on Capitol Hill are these the impeachment inquiry, but there's a lot of other stuff that needs to get done, including lawmakers have to hammer out a spending bill by like the end of the week, right?
Right. And so what we've been told by Democrats and Republicans alike is that they don't want this gumming up the works. Nobody around here seems to have a stomach for a shutdown. And so they believe that they are going to work this out. No muss, no fuss. Now, could the president throw a wrench in that and say, I'm not signing anything while I'm being investigated? That's always possible. That's a fear that some lawmakers have. But as far as the leaders on both sides here on Capitol Hill are concerned, they're going to keep the lights on.
Well, that is good news, at least. Nancy, thank you so much.
You're welcome.